Welcome to BeFrightened. We tell stories that will keep you up or help you sleep at night. This happened when I was 13 at summer camp. It's been years, but I still remember every detail. We were bored at camp that night. Someone brought up the idea of visiting the old abandoned campground about 8 miles away. It was off limits, which made it interesting. We waited for the counselors to go to bed. 5 of us snuck out: me, George, Carol, Barry, and Pauline. I've changed my friends' names for privacy. I broke into the camp's utility shed. We found 3 ATVs inside. I remember being both nervous and excited as I started one up. George and Barry took the other 2. I drove down the dirt road with Pauline behind me. Carol rode with George. At first we were all laughing and joking, but something at the time seemed off to me. I wanted to turn back, but I was too embarrassed to say anything. I kept going, even though I really didn't want to. Suddenly, all 3 ATVs started sputtering and their engines died, all at the same time. We looked at each other, confused and a little scared. It didn't make sense. How could they all break down together? We tried to start them up again, but nothing worked. That's when we realized how far we were from camp and how dark it had gotten. We checked our phones. No signal. Our only light was from the phones. We started arguing about what to do next. Carol wanted to walk back, saying we couldn't just sit there. Barry thought that was crazy and said we should wait until morning. Pauline, still shaken, agreed with Carol. She just wanted to get out of there. George backed Barry up, saying it was too dangerous to move. I couldn't decide. Both options seemed terrible to me. Then we heard it. A rustling in the bushes. It sounded too big to be a small animal. Then a low sound. Not quite a growl, not quite human. We huddled around the ATVs. We pointed our cell phones' flashlights into the darkness. The noises seemed to be coming from all around us. Pauline started crying, her voice filled with a fear I'd never heard before. Barry grabbed my arm so hard that it left bruises for days. We heard heavy footsteps and branches breaking in the distance. Our lights caught movement at the edge of the trees. I remember thinking that this can't be happening to us. George said quietly, "There's something out there." He pointed. I looked. For a second, I saw it too. A shape, tall and thin, moving strangely. Then it was gone. Carol asked what we saw. I tried to explain, but I couldn't find the words. How do you describe something like that? We kept arguing, but quietly. The thing kept circling us. We kept seeing flashes of movement. We all decided to run at the same time. We left the ATVs behind and ran back towards camp. The path felt longer now. Pauline fell over. I heard her cry out in pain. Barry and I grabbed her arms and we yanked her up. We couldn't leave her behind. We kept running. My legs felt like lead and my lungs burned. I couldn't get enough air. I was terrified to look over my shoulder. We heard a weird cry in the distance. It wasn't human, and it didn't sound like any animal that I knew of. It was high-pitched, but deep at the same time, if that makes sense. The sound echoed through the trees. We all froze for a second, looking at each other confused and scared. Then, without saying anything, we just bolted for it. Branches kept hitting my face as I ran. It hurt, but I didn't care. I slipped on some rocks. I was terrified I'd fall behind. Barry grabbed my arm. He pulled me along, and I forced myself to keep up with the rest. We came to a creek we didn't remember seeing before. The water was freezing. George slipped and yelled, almost falling in. Something howled behind us. It was closer now. We hurried up the other bank. Carol shouted and pointed ahead. She saw lights through the trees. The camp. Our camp. I felt a rush of relief, but I was still scared. We were close, but not safe yet. My legs really hurt. I was never a good long-distance runner, but I was too scared to stop. None of us stopped. As we ran, I kept thinking about how stupid we'd been to go out there. I was sure we were going to die that night. I remembered all the stories about kids going missing in the woods. I always thought they were just camp legends. Now I wasn't so sure. I thought about my parents. Would they ever know what happened to me? I promised myself if I got out of this, I'd never do anything so dumb again. We kept running. No one said anything. We were too scared and out of breath. I just focused on keeping up with the others and not tripping. We ran out of the trees onto the camp lawn. The grass was wet. We all fell down and collapsed. No one said anything, but their faces showed everything. We were alive, but terrified. I kept looking back at the trees, expecting the worst. The sky was getting lighter. I could best describe it as the sound of safety, as the birds started making familiar noises. It felt weird after what just happened. The camp director found us there. He looked really angry. He sent some staff off to get the ATVs. He started yelling about how dangerous it was and how we could have gotten hurt, or worse. We tried to explain, but he wouldn't listen. He just kept yelling. The staff came back after a while. They looked confused. They said the ATVs were fine, nothing wrong with any of them. They didn't see anything strange in the woods either. The director stopped yelling. He just stared at us for a bit. Then he told us to go to our cabins. For the next few days, we tried to act normal. But at night, I kept thinking about what we saw in the trees. I couldn't sleep well. I lost touch with Carol and Barry after that summer. Last I heard, Carol had moved to another state. Pauline and I stayed friends for a while, but she never wanted to discuss that night. Eventually, we drifted apart too. George is the only one I still see regularly. We don't bring it up often, but when we do, I can tell it still bothers him as much as it does me. Sometimes I wonder if the others think about it too, or if they've managed to forget. A solo camping trip to Yellowstone left me scared of the outdoors. It wasn't supposed to be that way, but that's what happened to me in the summer of 2019. I'd been to Yellowstone before with friends, but this time I wanted to experience the beauty of the wilderness on my own. As a woman who's always loved nature, I found a quiet spot in a designated camping area away from the busy sites. Tall pines surrounded me, with mountains in the distance. I set up my tent, arranged my gear, and hiked until sunset. Back at camp, I cooked dinner and watched the stars appear. The night air cooled quickly, so I retreated to my sleeping bag, looking forward to the days ahead. I didn't know then that in a few hours, my peaceful trip would become something I'd never forget. A noise woke me. I looked for my phone. The screen read 2:13 a.m. A car approached on the park road. It passed by, then returned. The engine slowed. Headlights lit up my tent, shining on the fabric. I sat up, suddenly alert. The car idled there, lights fixed on my tent. I wondered what they wanted. Were they lost, looking for a campsite, or something else? I considered calling out, but decided against it. The situation felt off. Minutes passed. I heard a muffled voice, but couldn't make out the words. My eyes adjusted to the light. Still, the car remained. Finally, after what seemed like eternity, the headlights turned off. The car drove away. I felt relieved. I told myself it was nothing. I grabbed my flashlight and knife, placing them close by. I got my car keys from my jacket. I held them tight. I listened to the forest. Every sound made me scared. I wanted to leave, but I thought it was all over. How very wrong I was. I lay back down but couldn't sleep. Every noise made me jumpy. I kept thinking about the car, wondering if they'd come back. I was tired but too scared to close my eyes. The night seemed endless. I thought about packing up and driving away, but I was too afraid to go outside. About an hour later, I heard another car. Or was it the same one? It sounded similar. It came closer and stopped near my campsite. The engine cut off. No headlights this time. I heard a car door open and slam shut. Then footsteps. They crunched on the ground outside, coming closer to my tent. I held my breath. The footsteps circled my tent slowly. I could see the shadow of a person passing by. I stayed completely still. My mind raced through options. Should I say something? Pretend to wake up suddenly? I decided to do nothing, hoping they'd just leave. I wanted to yell or do something, but I was too scared. I just stayed still. I hoped they would think I was asleep and leave. I kept holding my breath, then having to breathe quietly. I was sure they could hear me still. The footsteps completed a circle around my tent. Then they moved away. I heard the car door again, the engine started up, and the vehicle drove off. I waited, straining my ears for any sound of return. I didn't move for a long time after they left. I turned on my flashlight and looked around the tent. I peeked outside, but I didn't see anything. I zipped the tent up and put my backpack in front of it. I just sat there, listening and waiting for the sun to come up. I knew I wouldn't be sleeping the rest of the night. I expected the car to come back at any moment. Every noise put me on high alert. I watched the gradually lightening sky through my tent wall, willing for the sun to rise faster. When daylight finally came, I unzipped my tent and looked around. The campsite looked normal until I saw the footprints. They went all around my tent, just like I'd heard during the night. I didn't want to stay another night. I packed up quickly, not bothering to be neat. I kept looking around as I took down the tent. As I loaded my car, I scanned the area. The morning light revealed the beauty of Yellowstone, the towering trees, the distant mountains, the clear sky. It certainly did look beautiful and inviting now, but I wasn't having any of it. I approached my car, hesitating. What if they'd done something to it? I walked around, checking the tires. They looked fine. I peered underneath, not sure what I was looking for. I felt a bit silly. It's not like I'd recognize sabotage if I saw it. I got in the car and turned the key. The engine started, and I felt relieved. As I put the car in gear, I realized how worried I'd been that it wouldn't start. I drove slowly at first, still on edge. I kept glancing in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see that car again. Other campers were starting their day, looking happy. I wanted to tell them to be careful, but I didn't stop. I just wanted to get the hell out of the park. About halfway to the exit, I saw a vehicle pulled over at a scenic overlook. It looked like the one from last night. Same model, same color. It was empty. I drove past quickly. I didn't want to slow down and have a look. I had so many unanswered questions, and still do till this day. Who was in that car? What did they want? Was it just a prank or something more dangerous? As the park entrance receded in my mirror, I was glad to be leaving, but the memory of that night will probably stay with me forever. I don't think I will likely ever go solo camping again. I drove to Cape Cod with 4 friends. We'd rented a beach house for a week. The weather was perfect when we arrived. This is the summer of 2015. We raced to the beach. The sand scorched our feet. The cold waves shocked us as we plunged in. That night, we grilled burgers on the patio and watched the sunset. We talked about our plans for the week: swimming, sightseeing, maybe some hiking. Everything felt relaxed and fun. The mood was light, full of laughter and excitement. We stayed up late, drinking beer and catching up. It had been a while since we'd all been together like this. Work and life had kept us busy. This vacation was our chance to reconnect. We crashed in our rooms to the sounds of the waves. The next day, we went back to the beach. That's when I first saw him. A man standing at the edge of the beach watching us. He wore a blue shirt and khaki shorts. I pointed him out to my friends, but they didn't seem concerned. We tried to ignore him and enjoy our day, but I kept noticing him. He was always there, just far enough away to not seem too obvious. At the ice cream shop, I saw him pretending to read a newspaper while glancing over. Later, when we walked in town, I spotted him across the street. He never came close or tried to talk to us, but his constant presence made me feel uneasy. Over the next couple of days, the man appeared everywhere. On the beach, in town, outside restaurants. His constant presence put us on edge. Once I woke up in the middle of the night and saw him standing on the street outside of our rental house. I blinked, and he was gone. I started to feel paranoid. Was I imagining things? I was anxious. My friends picked up on it. They tried to reassure me, but I could tell they were getting worried too. We started going out in groups, never alone. We kept our doors locked. The carefree feeling of our vacation was gone. Instead, we felt that we were being watched. We tried to act normal, but the tension was always there. The next day, we went to a local festival. The crowds made me feel uncomfortable. I kept looking over my shoulder. My friend Alexis suggested we try the Ferris wheel. As we climbed higher, I spotted him. The man stood at the edge of the crowd, staring up at us. I pointed him out to the others. This time, they saw him too. The ride seemed to last forever. We felt trapped, exposed. When we got off the ride, the guys wanted to confront him, but he was gone. We hurried back to the house. No one felt like celebrating anymore. That night, none of us could sleep. We took turns watching the street from the windows. In the morning, we found that our car tires were slashed. One of my friends called the police. They came, took a report, but didn't seem concerned. Just kids causing trouble, they said. We knew better. The man was sending us a message. We were not welcome. We didn't feel safe, even in the house. Alexis wanted to leave. Others argued that we shouldn't let him win. We fought. Tensions rose. In the end, we decided to stay. Safety in numbers, we thought. We armed ourselves with kitchen knives and heavy flashlights. It felt ridiculous, but necessary. We started planning, always watching the windows. The next day dragged on. We mostly stayed inside. The beach outside looked inviting, but we didn't feel like going out to enjoy it. We kept the curtains drawn. By the evening, we were exhausted. That's when Alexis said she needed some air. Just a quick walk on the beach, she said. We should have stopped her. We didn't think much of it. An hour passed, then two. We realized Alexis hadn't come back. We called her cell, straight to voicemail. That's when the panic set in. We knew something was wrong. The strange man came to mind immediately. Had he done something to Alexis? We tried to stay calm, but fear was taking over. We had to find her. We grabbed the flashlights and spread out along the beach. We called Alexis's name over and over. We searched for hours. We checked the town, asked people if they'd seen her. No one had. We continued to try her cell, but each time it went straight to voicemail. Where could she be? What if she was hurt? What if the strange man had taken her? We were exhausted, but we couldn't stop looking. We called the police, but they said they couldn't do much until she'd been missing longer. We felt helpless and scared. Around dawn, I stumbled over something in the sand. Alexis's flip-flops. A few feet away, her cell phone lay face down, screen cracked, battery dead. This was the spot where I'd last seen the stranger watching us. We searched the area frantically. We found her jacket tangled in some beach grass. It looked like there had been a struggle. The reality of the situation hit us hard. Alexis wasn't just missing. Something was wrong. We called the police immediately. They seemed concerned now, not dismissive like before. They arrived quickly, taking our statements. We told them about the man, our slashed tires, everything. The police thought they knew the man we were talking about. He had caused trouble for tourists before. As the police searched for him, we waited at the house, tense and worried. Hours passed. Finally, an officer returned with news. They'd found the man at a local bar, acting suspiciously. The police were questioning him. but there was no sign of Alexis. We felt helpless. Someone suggested we retrace Alexis's steps. The police advised against it, but we couldn't just sit there. We grabbed flashlights and headed back to the beach. We stuck together. Our fear turned to determination. Just before noon, we heard a faint call. We found Alexis hidden in a lifeguard station, cold and scared but unharmed. Alexis told us the man had followed her. He'd tried to grab her, but she'd fought back and ran. She'd been too afraid to leave her hiding spot. The police found evidence in the man's car, linking him to other crimes. We realized how lucky we'd been. Our vacation was over. We left that day, shaken by our brush with danger. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave it in the comments below. If you have a story you'd like to share or need to contact us for any reason, you'll find our email address in the video description.